Hello, everybody. All the people I know and everybody that I don't know, pleased to meet you and hope we could be friends. Uh, I'm a filmmaker and I've shifted my attention and skills to social media for animal rights and the intersection with environmentalism. And I've started a series of social media channels called VegCerpts. VegCerpts is a relatively new social media channel. Just share my screen here. Do we have this problem before that it wants to install an audio device?
Not that I'm aware of.
But are you trying to share a film?
I'm just trying to. Oh, I guess I don't need audio. Well, yeah, I will need audio.
Yeah, we see your screen.
James, just before you had the same issue, right?
Yeah, I can't tell if it's going to share audio.
So it's transitioning from deception to honesty. To me, climate healing is an engineering project. Engineering projects never work if we are deceiving each other. Engineering projects have to be done with integrity.
Are you hearing that?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Back to the top. Great. VegSherps is a relatively new social media channel that seeks to build community around the wisdom captured in long format media, like documentaries, TED Talks, and recordings of presentations, like the ones you've seen today and will see tomorrow. The concept is to excerpt intriguing or even critically important ideas and share that wisdom in posts of less than a minute's length on various social media platforms. Simple enough, and so far not terribly unique, movie and TV excerpts make up a significant portion of social media. I hope that VegCerpts becomes a beacon to a particular brand of vegan activists, activists like me, lifelong learners who not only want to encourage everyone to go vegan, but want to examine how our local and global systems change in the process. The signs of change are there, and we'll be talking about them all weekend. The name VegCerpts is a portmanteau or a mashup of the words vegan and excerpts. The logo is a carrot representing vegan wisdom, and a knife, which represents cutting, another word for editing. I learned to be a cutter in film school and went on to a 20-year career editing television. Having been trained in journalism and film, I absorb a lot of media, and frequently that I hear a good soundbite and think, the movement needs to hear that. A small piece of the big picture falls into place. VegSerp seeks out the aha moment. And when the folks absorb it on social media, there's hopefully a bit of entertainment and they share it. And maybe the movement gets a little wiser. For a small but important number of people, the concept may intrigue them enough to follow the link I provide in the caption to gasp, watch the whole video. It's the kind of thing that, if it's the kind of thing that turns the crank, maybe they'll become a certified climate healer. Many of you were here for the VCOP 14 when Dr. Rao explained that climate change is conceptually simple. Let's watch one of my earliest VegCerpts. I've added the music, the carrot graphic that guides the eye where to look, and the big chunky subtitles.
So it's transitioning from deception to honesty. To me, climate healing is an engineering project. Engineering projects never work if we are deceiving each other. Engineering projects have to be done with integrity and honesty. And I know that from experience. From a systems engineering perspective, it doesn't matter whether climate change is not the leading cause. You have to anyway address animal agriculture for all the other causes. Unfortunately, it's not engineering that's happening right now. It is storytelling. It's marketing.
That was pretty meta because that was a VCup and we're recording on another VCup. So Sailesh's key takeaway here is that we've had the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for 35 years, and climate scientists have proven anthropogenic climate change. But now we need engineers to design solutions that work. The intergovernmental part of the IPCC involves a lot of political posturing that cannot result in success. Engineers must be honest, because it's what they design and build. If it doesn't work, they'll be fired. A simple yet important concept, I think, and kind of an aha moment when we realize that climate policymakers and political scientists are not engineers. There's a minimal amount of editing in these kind of posts that they typically require. Most of the effort goes into making consistently branded poster frames for both horizontal and vertical formats to accommodate various platform preferences. The carrot orange and leafy green color scheme is constant. I've created a VegCerpts I have a VegCerpts account on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and just added TikTok and Twitter for reasons that I'll explain in a bit. For Instagram in particular, a consistently branded grid of poster frames provides a topical index. Somebody who followed a post to the channel is bound to scroll through the grid to find similarly themed content. If they find what they like, they'll subscribe and follow. Many advocates recognize that historically, it has been daunting to exert political influence on food and agriculture. This VegCerpts is an excerpt from the video featured on the PlantBased treaty website that emphasizes what a past treaty has accomplished. This is the poster image I made. For this VegCerpts.
In January 2021, World Meteorological Association said the ozone hole is successfully closed. This is an incredible achievement of humans to discover a catastrophic problem, coming together to face it and successfully eliminate it. Now we need to do the same for the climate crisis. It's time that we all come together and participate in the plant-based treaty as a companion to the Paris Climate Accords.
Unlike big oil's interference in climate science, the Montreal Protocol wasn't inhibited by Big Freon for making ozone restoring policies. By the time the planetary boundaries were developed in 2009, ozone depletion had retreated into the green, the safe living space for humanity. One planetary boundary down, 8 to go. And of course, climate change is the one that we focus on in the COP summits. Big Ag, whose impact on the planetary boundaries we saw in the earlier VegCerpts, has a powerful political lobby that resists all regulation, especially at the national level. But municipal politics are proving to be much more responsive. The plant-based treaty was just recently signed by the mayor of Edinburgh, Scotland, joining Los Angeles and 22 other municipalities. Delegates from the plant-based treaty presented at COP28 and at an event called Vegan Cities, Support for Small Farmers and Plant-Based Treaty to Fight Climate Change. I'll eventually do some VegCerpts from the panel of vegans, but I decided to first focus on an animal scientist who dominated the Q&A after the presentations.
Vegan cities will cause mass malnutrition. My name is Michael Lee, and I'm observer from the European Federation of Animal Science. My background is a nutritional biochemist. 55% young women in the UK are iron deficient, and it's rising. Young women are the most aligned to reducing animal source foods in the diet, which is extremely worrying. Also, the country with the highest level of stunting in the world is Malawi, and it has the lowest level of animal source food consumption. So we must be extremely cognizant. India has huge challenges with vitamin D, vitamin B12, iron, selenium, and iodine deficiency. And of course, has the lowest level of meat consumption. Veganism is for the privileged few.
I think everybody here can see through his rather silly rhetoric. He didn't actually have a question, but read his prepared statement for at least 2 minutes, during which he blamed the expansion of palm oil production on humanity's rejecting beef tallow from their diet. There were 48,000 climate-minded delegates attending COP28, all of whom eat food. But by the number of empty chairs I see here, few of them wanted to hear anything about food solutions to climate change. Still, the European Federation of Animals We Eat Science sent their lackey to mansplain iron deficiencies to the mostly female panel of vegans and declare at a climate conference that 1.4 billion Indians need to eat a lot more meat. Thanks, guys. Many of our frenemies in the mainstream climate movement were dismayed at the decision to have a literal oil sultan host the climate summit in Dubai. But it was a marvelous opportunity to expose the what I call the maintenance crew for the status quo of oil and also for meat. Usually there's a solidarity amongst our keepers, but Sultan Al Jaber unwittingly did this vegan movement a service by pointing out that the mitigation of his industry's emissions alone won't dodge climate catastrophe.
We need to phase out emissions in all sectors, including transportation, agriculture, heavy industry, and of course, fossil fuels.
Surely, the roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels will allow for sustainable socio-economic development. Unless you want to take the world back into chaos, and there is no science out there or no scenario out there that says that the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve 2025.
You saw that I added some animal emojis over the subtitle to emphasize animal agriculture. Those who demand a transformation to renewable energy use the language of phasing out of the fossil fuel industry, yet lack the spine or even demand of a reduction of meat consumption. The soundbite at the end of the VegCerpt was taken from a Zoom interview before the COP summit, where Al Jaber was triggered by questions about phasing out oil entirely. This is the poster frame I created for that VegCerpt, which I phrase as a question. COP28 leadership wants to end the burning machine and the killing machine? The true answer is they don't. COP President Al Jaber doesn't want to shut down either machine. He wasn't really commenting on food, veganism, or actually seeking mitigation of animal agriculture emissions. For 28 years, COP delegations want to transform the energy grid to renewables and phase out fossil fuels. But they want to keep our dangerously obsolete food system and just tweak animal agriculture. Why? Because carnism makes everyone see the world through their meat goggles. But you and I, we see it through a vegan lens, which reveals the duplicity of those who maintain extractive and exploitive industries and habits. As climate anxiety increases, more people see that there are clearly massive, effective solutions to our environmental crises that we've barely even tried. Here's another plant-based treaty VegCerpt, and isn't that a provocative clickbaity title? Elsewhere at COP28, Stephen George, a literal rocket scientist from the European equivalent of NASA, attended a talk by Johan Rockström, who led the development of the planetary boundaries with a team of over 20 top scientists.
Thank you, Stephen George, European Space Agency and the Plant-Based Treaty. Could you explain what the role of the global food system is in getting us back within the planetary boundaries?
yes, the food system transition is absolutely necessary. There is science showing that even if we phase out fossil fuels, the food system itself can make us go through the 1.5 degrees Celsius. George W. Bush the Elder in 1992 at the Rio conference to say that the American lifestyle is not up for negotiation. Well, dear friends, it is up for negotiation today because now we have this finite space defined by the planetary boundaries. That's, I think, very helpful. And it addresses specifically the food system.
Thanks to Steve and George for eliciting such a clear response from Rockstrom in the Q&A. It makes me worry that the topic didn't naturally come up in the presentation on planetary science collaborations. Stephen will reveal more of his COP28 experiences at VCOP tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern when he presents along with Anita Krantz of the SAVE movement on the topic of vegan donut economics. I present on vegan donut economics at VCOP twice in 2021 to illustrate humanity's role as to what Dr. Rao calls the thermostat species. Turns out that humanity isn't so removed from Mother Nature, and she has a job for us as humans. A quick recap. The donut-shaped illustrates the simultaneous management of ecological overshoot, the outside of the donut, represented by the 9 planetary boundaries, and developmental shortfall, the inside of the donut's track. The inside of the donut that tracks to most of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. With our vegan lenses, we see through the blanket excuses that agricultural interests use to exempt themselves from regulation and responsibility from their environmentally damaging externalities. British economist Kate Raworth originated this concept in her book, Donut Economics, 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist. There are certain passages in Raworth's TED Talk waiting to be VegCerpted, but I came across this aha moment when she and her husband appeared on a podcast called What Could Possibly Go Right?
What was it we couldn't see? Why did it take us so long? I really think we'll look back. Why did it take us so long to let go of owning a car? Why did it take me so long to move to a largely plant-based diet or a fully plant-based diet? Why was I so afraid of giving up milk and cheese? I personally went vegan about 9 months ago, and I thought, I'm going to miss cheese. I just really don't miss cheese. I don't miss any of it. I really like it. So why do we get so entrenched in what we think is normal? And then after we've shifted, we look back and think, why could I not see this other side of it? Why could I not see the possibility? So I really think there's something important there about learning from changes we have made. I'm so glad we made, and how that can somehow help us hasten through the ones we've yet to realize we want to make.
She mentioned I found that by just Googling her name and the word vegan next to it. And this was the only hit I have, and I do it every once in a while to see if she's talked about veganism in the years that have passed since. So it's been a vegan donut. This economic model has been vegan for, I'd say, about since January 2021, 9 months before September, she said. So I haven't been able to find any other mention, as I said, but we hope she'll soon express it loudly and more often, and we'll save her a spot to present at any VCOP summit in the future. There are other great VegCerpts I can extract from the same interview at some point, but I like to keep my sources and themes varied through the newsfeed. This podcast was recorded 3 years ago, but the insights are timeless rather than timely. I worked on a television show called Living Truth that focused on biblical teaching, delving into ancient truth and bringing it alive. That's the living part. The producers made a conscious decision that our purpose was not to directly address timely issues in the news, as many programs do, but to develop the timeless stories in the Bible in ways that help viewers transform themselves into spiritual resilience for any situation. Any movement needs spiritual resilience. And in an age of big data, there's a wealth of information out there that languishes in old videos if somebody doesn't pluck them out and give it some air. The recent Oxford Union debate, "This House Would Go Vegan," was not live streamed. So I had to do a timely VegCerpts of Sailesh Rao on the Million Vegan Grandmothers podcast. The recording wouldn't be posted until the January, rather the posting of the debate. And so this was before we heard the results, but we hadn't actually been able to watch any of it.
And each of us got like 10 minutes to speak. I would speak on the environment, and Dr. Chidi and Bhargav on the health matter, and then Joey Carbstrong would speak on ethics. And then the other side, it was supposed to be like that, but I don't know what happened. But they were basically all of them focusing on the cultural and traditional aspects, why you should continue to eat meat, eat animals. It was more of an emotional appeal they were making to the members of the Oxford Union. We were making a factual case. You know, the reason the students of the Oxford Union voted for us, some of them came and told me that our side gave them hope that there is a way out. The other side was giving them fear. Don't step over there. It's going to be hard. It's going to be inconvenient. You know, hope over fear.
Who's that guy on the left? The aha moment for me from that clip was that vegans are often judged overtly or subconsciously as sentimentalists, too emotional to be trustworthy. But when we throw down in a debate forum, what happens? The vegans come out with facts, evidence, and hard logic that support our worldview, while it's the non-vegans who retreat from evidence-based arguments to emotionality and tug at social insecurities, and then brag about their helplessness to their meat and cheese addictions. Now that the debate has been published, social media influencers are doing their own VegCerpts. I never said that I invented excerpting, of course. Oh, wait.
Biggest survey on human health ever done. 880 million people surveyed. And they discovered that the richest parts of China had the highest rates of cancer. The poorest, rural parts, hardly any cancer. The rates of cancer were something like 1 in 100,000. In the richest parts of China, it's roughly about 1 in 3, 1 in 4. And they scratched their head. They didn't understand, why should this be? Then they discovered, when they put all the evidence together, they said that the more meat and dairy products you have in your diet, the greater your risk of cancer.
Before the debate, I wasn't aware of Dr. Chidi Ngwaba. I got his name right. But what an asset to the vegan movement. And notice how he expounds to a non-vegan audience the wisdom of the China study, something that we all know. Presto, T. Colin Campbell has joined the debate without leaving the United States. Here's another plant-based news excerpt of Julia Roberts in the Netflix movie Leave the World Behind, which I haven't yet watched, but has been described as, quote, a nightmarish cautionary tale about our reliance on technology. It is also a timely story, there's that word again, about the historical fissures in modern American society. I must issue an F-bomb warning. Also, scenes of self-loathing humanity.
Fuck each other over all the time without even realizing it. We fuck every living thing on this planet over and think it'll be fine because we use paper straws and we're the free range chicken. Big thing is, I think deep down we know we're not fooling anyone. I think we know we're living a lie, an agreed upon mass delusion to help us ignore and keep ignoring how awful we really are.
I think we, the VCOP community, are far more optimistic and upbeat. But sooner or later, we all have those doubts as to whether Homo sapiens will ever become that thermostat species that Sailesh is talking about. Plant-based news branded this as Netflix dropping vegan facts. And we love it when a mainstream audience, perhaps seeking escapist entertainment, is instead served a wake-up call. Now, these are great excerpts that the plant-based news identifies, isolated, and shared. Obviously, I won't excerpt an excerpt and treat this same clip with VegCerpts branding. but I do want to repost these gems for the for the VegCerpts community. That's why I added those TikTok and Twitter channels, so I can repost them to a newsfeed without disrupting this homogeneity of the Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube grid. The VegCerpts poster frames were somewhat inspired by the Kurzgesagt YouTube channel, whose topical animations have poster frames with provocative titles. If anyone wants to collaborate in building a vegan Kurzgesagt channel, gather your capital and talent and hit me up. We'll make a vegan Kurzgesagt channel. This channel has come under fire for their funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but insists that they primarily pay their team of writers and animators with crowdsourced funds. Full disclosure, I sort of sorted these topics on the screen capture specifically to inspire you all to watch them and comment. Those of you who follow YouTuber Mike the Vegan may know that he has challenged the facts as presented on the Kurzgesagt videos that feature meat and dairy. Mike's channel is a very VegCerpts worthy. You say that 10 times fast. I'm just inventing the human language here. He just posted the response to the worst claims in the Oxford debate yesterday. Check that out in your own time, like and subscribe. Another Photoshop confession. I added the poster frame at the bottom right of when Mike had Dr. Rao as a guest, but that was 4 years ago. I wanted to take a moment to examine my VegCerpts branding in comparison to other familiar YouTube channels. Mike the Vegan talks directly to camera in his video, so it makes sense for his poster frames to always feature his face. Mike is well researched, and when his face shows up in your suggested videos, you know what to expect. This is a legitimate approach to brand around the influencer's face and voice, even when the majority of social media might be described as, can I say, Vanity Fair? I mean, they call it Facebook. The conventional wisdom is that your face is your branded asset. People remember faces better than they remember names, and they forget most of what you say, but are likely to remember how the words coming out of your face made them feel. Despite the advantages of self-branding, I've decided to build a brand that does not feature my face. That's No Face from Spirited Away. Some people will get that. Kurzgesagt is a faceless channel which accomplishes somewhat of an institutional character. But they do have a consistent narrator, and I don't intend to narrate on VegCerpts, which leaves the option open for others to produce their own VegCerpts for the channel. I've always been impressed with the consistent integrity of Emily Barwick, better known as Bite Size Vegan, with whom I've talked shop about video production the 2 or 3 times that I've met her. She also speaks directly to camera, but she doesn't always put her face on the poster frame. The text branding is consistent and invites you to scroll through her topical content. Jeff Adams's website, Vegan Linked, seeks to be a resource to link together vegan communities. There's a video about Bite Size Vegan at the top right there. So you see the YouTubers have their own community. Jeff is a self-trained video producer, and his YouTube channel compiles over 5 years of interviews with people about their vegan stories. He also edited Jane Velez Mitchell's documentary, Countdown to Year Zero, which features Dr. Rao, who in turn interviewed Jeff on his Vegan World 2026 Moonshot podcast. I was glad to see that Jeff follows VegCerpts because he demonstrates a great sense of how sharing personal stories builds community and strengthens the vegan movement. I've recently come across Debug Your Brain, run by YouTuber Justin Jacobs. He tends towards the timely commentary on what's popping in the vegan news, and there's nothing wrong with his clickbaity titles. You can tell that I'm sharing my hit parade of specifically YouTube influencers to follow. Most of us probably go to the nutritionfacts.org website to type in the topical search engine, but I wanted to compare Dr. Michael Greger's YouTube channel because of his famous motto, "We comb through thousands of scientific papers from the peer-reviewed medical literature so that busy people like you don't have to." His field is medicine, but mine is media. So I like to think that I watch long format media and extract the ideas so you don't have to. We know that he's a well-researched MD, but did you know that he also has a degree in agriculture? NutritionFacts.org has a lot of articles that aren't featured in videos. Marian Erickson has received permission from Dr. Greger and all of her content originators, including Dr. Rao, for her to read aloud any of the online content for her plant-based briefing channel. Turns out she's a professional voiceover artist who uses her talent to read aloud the blogs, posts, and articles that inspire her vegan community and builds awareness for engaging the world beyond. The plant-based briefing channel literally gives static text voice and gives an audience with limited opportunities to read the option to listen to an audio podcast while they multitask. Let's take a moment to contrast Marian's permission mandate with my impulsive and reactive daily VegCerpts workflow. In our media society, we're aware of copyright and intellectual property, yet at the same time, the interwebs are awash with unlicensed media. The advent of social media required fair use law to acknowledge the digital chaos of the modern world. There aren't really clear protections for any content, and it requires litigation and a per instance judge ruling to determine if copyright material use is not protected under fair use law. But there are 5 precepts that would normally be examined. Clockwise, VegCerpts is 1, small, 2, does not diminish the value of the original, 3, modified content, 4, is non-commercial, and 5, used for educational purposes, and if I'm feeling sassy, satirical. If there's a vegan well to which I keep returning, I'll seek permission from the content owner or the creator. I always link back to the original source unless I am being satirical or questionable characters or using some abstract to direct attention to another topic or influencer. I'd love it if a VegCerpt opened a new relationship with a vegan influencer, and I'd definitely take the post down or modify it if they had any issues with it. Hopefully, when I extract from vegan peers, they understand that I'm promoting their ideas and channeling traffic towards their brand. But it can be a tricky dance since I clearly am using their words, opinions, research, and following to build VegCerpts' influence. I don't want to be anyone's competitor. I hope to use social media to promote community growth, and sometimes I will be indistinguishable from self-promotion. Here's an example where I broke both the timelessness rule and the self-promotion rule. You be the judge. I had a short film selected at the International Vegan Film Festival, so I was tempted to use the channel to invite vegans to a timely local event. I had to come up with a way to dress it up with an abstract and timeless message. My poster image reflects upon what happens when we organize and attend vegan-themed events. The world's brightest vegan ideas in a dark theater. So it could be any theater, right? No narration on this one, just the original trailer music. So the show of thumbs on your Zoom reaction buttons. Was that shameless self-promotion? Thumbs down. Thumbs up if I get away with it. I think
I didn't hear it.
Oh, there was just music.
No, we didn't hear any music either.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's weird. I was hearing it pretty loud. You've heard all the other clips so far?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, good. We didn't miss anything. It was just music.
Yeah.
So I think that the social media audiences are sensitive to when content creators bend or break their format to use their platform for opportunistic promotion. So I'll only do this sparingly. The trailer used a shot from my film and put it over the text, thought-provoking. VCOP regulars will recognize the projected face as Gerard Wedderburn Bishop, who was presented here many times. He's a former scientific advisor of the Australian government and was the primary fact checker for the documentary Eating Our Way to Extinction. I essentially animated Gerard's YouTube video that examines the science behind Dr. Rao's position paper in the Journal of Ecological Society. In future, I'll dig many VegCerpts from Gerard and his World Preservation Foundation YouTube channel. But the first one featuring him comes from a panel discussion on the real truth about health.
I'd like to quote Jonathan Foley. He's the leader of Project Drawdown. Jonathan Foley says, things happen very, very, very slowly and then all at once. And I think that's true. We'll have a profound impact on our planet if we can turn the world plant-based. It's inevitable in terms of the environment, biodiversity, climate, water, deforestation, purely by changing what we eat.
So how about that? I quoted Gerard quoting Jonathan Foley. And Jonathan Foley, I shared this video with him because he's in my LinkedIn network, but he's yet to respond. I don't think he said anything controversial, but you never know how people are going to respond once they know that you're vegan. Foley isn't likely vegan himself, but does have a VegCerpts worthy TED Talk that demonstrates he understands animal agriculture impacts on the climate very well. While Project Drawdown envisions 100% phase out of fossil fuels, they persist so far to measure only a 50% global reduction of meat and dairy. Obvious contradictions there for political reasons. This is far from this is from a panel discussion on the real truth about health led by Stephen Shore and alongside VCOP alumni Glenn Mercer and Ocean Robbins. We saw Glenn Mercer briefly in the preview VegCerpts, but he has the distinction of inspiring my very first VegCerpts posted by my very first VegCerpts post by making this provocative comparison in VCOP 14.
When we talk about climate deniers, we need to include not just people like Senator Rubio of Florida, who say things like the climate is always changing and try to deny the reality that it's getting hotter. We need to also include Al Gore. It's time we include Al Gore as a climate denier. It's time that we include all those who insist that the only cause of climate change is the burning of fossil fuels.
So while we share the insights of the luminaries who inspire us as vegans, we could take the occasional opportunity to call out the villains and the fallen angels of the climate movement who have become or always were hobbled by their capitalist mindsets. Though the Glenn Mercer show started a year ago and his YouTube channel goes back 6 years, his podcast company, Real Many Plants, have started posting YouTube Shorts, a feature designed for short format vertical videos on YouTube for mobile users. I usually don't think of YouTube as mostly as a mobile device. It's more of a desktop thing for me. And my opportunity to show horizontal videos as a filmmaker, I like horizontal videos more than vertical videos. But YouTube is starting to do vertical videos as well. So I'll probably start doing that as a way to share my VegCerpts. Glenn recently interviewed Vasily Stanescu, a communications professor at Mercer University in Georgia, who he has also presented at VCOP. In this excerpt, Stanescu explains how his family reacted when, at the age of 9, he declared he didn't want to eat animals anymore.
And do you remember what caused that determination?
Well, they did not react well. So, yes, they thought it was a phase of being a picky eater, but it was difficult. And so they stopped preparing food for me. So they would just only make meat. And so I had to sort of make do making the food I could at the age of 9. Lots of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and huge bags of oranges or whatever, until they finally decided, okay, this has gone on long enough, and then they switched and started making vegetarian food. So it was, very tough. Like I say, lots of children actually go vegetarian, and from pressure or parents or society, a lot of them switch. And I think about this a lot in their vegan activism. Lots of times we're talking to people who actually have a hidden trauma. They've gone vegetarian at a young age.
So that had a really interesting subtitling methodology that Real Many Plants added to Glenn's little excerpt. And of course, that's to draw attention to the full-length podcast episode with Vasily Stanescu. And it's an opportunity, like we know on social media, that the more you put words on the screen, people are compulsive readers. So even if they got their sound turned off, they may turn on the sound if they're intrigued by something that's been written. Yet, if you had an hour-long podcast, you wouldn't want those kind of subtitles for the whole thing. It'd probably drive you crazy. Here's another excerpt from Glenn's interview with Mike Young, and his very provocative and maybe even controversial advice in a social aspect.
There's some chapters on different relationships, who you choose to hang out with, because you do become like the 5 people you hang out with the most. You just have to be intentional about it. I think it's just, there's certain truths, which is everyone is subject to this. No one is immune. You become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you need to choose wisely, especially if your goal is health, fun, not being chronically ill, and longevity. Health span and longevity. If that's your goal, you have to be very specific, hyper specific in who you're hanging out with. And a lot of people, even though they mean well, they will, just being around them will hurt your ability to accomplish what you want to do in your life. That's it.
Yeah, we could be pretty sure of the 110.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Mike.
Same here.
That's a pretty cool excerpt that makes me want to watch the whole show, and I hope it makes you want to follow Glenn's podcast. It sheds important light on how important it is for new vegans to find community. That's my takeaway, and of course, it's my personal bent. Everybody thinks that new vegans are only desperate to find protein. It's certainly easier to be vegan when around other vegans, and to be plant-based when you're around people that are going to seek out the same kind of food that you do. So that comes to the end of my presentation. Glenn is here with us, so I'd like to invite him forward and let him talk a bit about his channel and the idea of having this long format discussions that's in depth and engages a community that is, has that attention span, and already recognize what he like about Glenn's themes. They're more likely to watch it, but these little VegCerpts can permeate throughout social media and find those people that want to engage in that long format stuff, and maybe even more importantly, in this capacity, to engage with VCOP and climate healers and be part of our community. Glenn, you there?
I am. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for your comments. I enjoyed your presentation. I would be delighted if the people who are listening would check out my channel and subscribe. I think thus far, all my guests have been vegan. We usually talk all things vegan, but I try to have guests from everything from, doctors, vegan doctors. I just interviewed Dr. Clapper to, I had a stand-up comic once, a vegan stand-up comic. Someone who's an expert in gardening and all kinds of different areas of life. A slight correction, Ray, from what I think you said. I think you said that Real Men Eats Plants was mine. Real Men Eats Plants is like an umbrella organization run by a friend of mine named Brian Denstedt. And what he wants to have is a family of podcasts. So he currently has mine, and he does one called Plant-Based on Fire, which interviews plant-based entrepreneurs, small businesses. And he wants to do another one called Meat versus Plants or Meat versus Vegan or something, where he has arguments with meat eaters. In any case, he's got a website called Real Men Eats Plants. I'm technically the owner of my YouTube channel, but he also broadcasts it, puts it out on other podcast platforms. So he and his team, and he has about a half dozen people working for him, started doing these excerpt clips that you were showing, these short clips. And it turns out, I asked him, who's doing this? Who's editing it? And he said, AI. So, some of them are not as good as others. And I've learned that AI doesn't have a great sense of humor. The timing of AI is not up to my standards. So I have suggested to Brian and his team specific excerpt clips from some of my videos, and I've tasked them with editing them to my specifications. So hopefully those will show up in the next week, and I hope they'll be a little funnier than the ones that Mr. AI has generated. But I do like in these short clips, and I agree with you, Ray, that it would be annoying to see the subtitles for an hour-long interview, but for 30 seconds, it kind of works to show the words on the screen. I think that somebody should do that when the Republican candidate for president speaks, because the words make no sense, and it would be amusing to read them as he speaks. Were there any questions you wanted to put to me, Ray, or anything else you want me to address?
Well, you're a YouTuber now. You've been doing your show for about a year, but you've had content for about 5 years on that channel. And I don't know if you've done it on other channels as well. I scrolled down.
I don't know about the 5-year thing. I've been doing this thing on YouTube for 1 year. I once had somebody created for me a YouTube channel somehow without telling me. That might have gone back 5 years. But there was just the one clip on it that now is the one that plays. It was my talk at the Writers Guild. And that one plays as you enter my YouTube channel. It's the story of it's a quick 8-minute story of my history of being vegan.
Do you find that as you engage as you put content out on social media, that there's a relationship that you develop with the people that watch your content? You've also been involved in television, and we know how passive television is. There is no connection. Right. Now we've social media, it's more interactive, and people come to see something that's I was going to say specific, but you have a wide variety of topics and engage, and there's so much overlap.
Yeah, well, sometimes I see that people post comments on the interviews on the podcast, and I try to reply, and sometimes it's the same people, so I suppose there are some of the same listeners. I'll mention that I interviewed Sailesh, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago or so, and that episode is called The Avatar of Optimism. And I hope everyone will want to watch that, because I've come to believe that optimism is actually the 6th macronutrient. You need it to live. And whenever I need a dose of optimism, I tune into Climate Healers.
Thank you, Glenn. Planned for that one. It was some interaction with you and Sailesh. I can't remember it right now, but that was a great episode.
Thank you. And thanks, Sailesh.
Thank you, Glenn.
I remember what it was. It was Sailesh talking about his addiction to cigarettes. So that's probably going to come up in our addiction panel that's coming up.
Former addiction, we should
Yes. Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been 26 years. Yes.
I see Jane Velez Mitchell here, so let me say hi and invite her to be a guest on my show.
Okay. There are
I
so
would
many
love
people
to.
here. Yeah,
I
there
would
you
love
go.
to, Glenn. I accept.
All right. I'll email you.
And she is leading the panel on addiction.
Yes.
Okay.
And she is documenting the vegan movement, the history of the vegan movement. I mean, no one else is covering some of these critical moments in our history. And she is the only one doing it. So I'm incredibly grateful to her.
Back at you.
Thanks, Jen. Anyone else have questions for Ray?
I should mention that the Million Vegan Grandmothers are starting to make excerpts as well, which is great. And I'll share those as they appear on my channels, on the channels. I hope everybody understood what I was talking about, where the grid is kind of a homogeneous index that you can sort through, and it disrupts it if I share other people's content. But because I'm a multi-platform channel, I'll be able to share it on Twitter, where it's less about the grid, it's more about the flow, the news feed.
Right. No, it's a great concept. You know, it's like plant-based briefing, but for videos. And I mean, that's a lot of work. You have to go through all the videos to find the nuggets and lure people to come and watch the videos.
And definitely the VCOP has been the biggest inspiration to do something like this, because I know that there's those videos that I thought, wow, that was an amazing presentation. But as time goes on, people aren't watching it. And even when you share a hour-long presentation with somebody saying, hey, this was great, they go, oh, what is it about? And how long is it? Oh, yeah, ain't nobody got time for that. You know. But if you have a VegCerpt that locks them in, they go, oh, I need to know about that. Then they're more compelled, or I need to know the context of that. And I mean, the excerpts are something that's familiar in the television world. It's usually, or even the long format media world on YouTube, where you take the most tantalizing moment and put it at the beginning of the content, so people will watch until they resolve whatever was interesting about that little clip. So this is kind of extracting that and putting it onto social media, onto TikTok and Instagram, and hopefully leading people to the original source, probably on YouTube.
Right. Yeah. So you have a Patreon link. Can you post that?
All these from my link tree.
Can you put that in the chat, the link tree? Because I want people to know about your Patreon link and support your work, you know.
Thank you.